Welcome back, everyone. This is Sheepdog Smokey, and this is honestly one that surprised me. Former Obama ICE director, legitimate crisis at the border with stunning numbers. You know we have a problem when former Obama officials say there is a crisis at the border. They're not kidding. They are overwhelmed. Former ICE acting director under President Obama, John Sandweg, noted on CNN that the stunning numbers on the southern border are creating a legitimate crisis. While Congress does nothing, we're being overrun with illegals. I'm honestly surprised CNN even allowed the word illegals on their network. A surge of Border Patrol and judges cannot be enough. President Trump needs to close the border. A mega caravan is heading our way. President Trump is responding to the Border Patrol's assessment that the border is in full crisis mode, now with thousands currently coming our way and another mother of all caravans forming in Honduras. The current migrant caravan, made up of around 2,500 Central Americans and Cubans, is traveling through the Chiapas after leaving Tapachula last weekend. Mexico Daily News reports a massive cohort of prospective migrants, dubbed the Mother of All Caravans, is forming in Honduras, the Federal Interior Secretary said today. We are aware that a new caravan is forming in Honduras that they're calling the Mother of All Caravans, which could be made up of more than 20,000 people, Olga Sanchez Cordero said. The effort to overwhelm our system is going as planned. The detention centers are at or near capacity, so the Border Patrol is forced to release illegals with a bus ticket and a court date in the future. It's not too difficult to figure out that the word has gotten out that it's time to come to America because you can get in with no problem. In fact, the Border Patrol released 24,000 illegals into the interior of the country in the past 2 weeks. On Tuesday, the Rio Grande Valley sector apprehended nearly 1,700 illegal aliens, making it the highest one-day total since 2014. At its current rate, the Rio Grande Valley sector will surpass 2014 apprehensions during the last mass migration influx. President Trump tweeted out that he may close the southern border. Mexico is doing nothing to help stop the flow of illegal immigrants to our country. They are all talk and no action. Likewise, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador have taken our money for years and they do nothing. They're not taking it now, are they? The Dems don't care. Such bad laws may close the southern border. Put Americans first and close the border. The U.S. doesn't need the extra burden of thousands of Central Americans who are at or below the poverty line. We can't sustain this. We're giving them bus tickets and a nice little request that they come back for court so they can be deported. I'm not a cold-hearted, well, can't say that word or I might not have a strike against me, but I'm not cold-hearted. I see people who want a better life, but I see people breaking our laws to do that. Look at the people who have gone into Mexico legally, such as a woman and her husband who were there for vacation, but the woman was arrested for supposedly having drugs, which were, of course, not. They were cough drops. She was held. She was not allowed to contact her attorney. She was not bonded out. I don't remember exactly how long she was held, but when they finally released her, took her to the airport so she could go home, they actually offered to let her stop and buy cough drops. So they literally arrested her for something and then offered to let her buy more of that something at a shop in the airport. We have a young veteran who begged to be allowed to not enter Mexico because he had forgotten, but then realized he had a firearm in his vehicle. They wouldn't let him get out of line to go back to his home. While he was still in the U.S., they wouldn't let him go backwards to get to his home. They made him enter Mexico, where he was then arrested and languished for entirely too long. Because Mexico doesn't care about Americans. You enter their country illegally, you go into a dark hole from which you may never escape. You may not even live to see sunlight again as a free person. But we're expected to open our borders, not enforce our laws. And when someone kills a young woman like Kate Steinle, or a young man like Corporal Singh, or multiple officers like the absolute monster that laughed while in court about how he wanted to kill more, and we let them out and to do it again and again, then we're in a crisis. The system is flawed and broken. And yes, I completely agree that we need to close the border. And of course, we have, as we saw earlier today on Twitter, We have journalists saying, if we close the border, we'll have an avocado shortage. Saints preserve us. How would I live without an avocado? To be honest, I've not eaten avocado in likely about 2 months, roughly around there. For Super Bowl Sunday, my family and I rented a movie and had chips and guacamole and salsa and queso. And we had a lot more fun watching that movie than the idiots on the gridiron. And that is the last time I've eaten any part of an avocado. And you know what? I could go the rest of my life without ever eating one again. Yes, they're good. Avocado is good for you. But many other things are. I can think of many things that involve garlic, that involve bratwurst, and other foods from places not in Mexico. I can also think of plenty of places in the United States that have very similar climates to Mexico, where, we might just be able to grow our own avocados. But you know what? If not, not having avocados is no reason to ignore an illegal immigration crisis. We have states like California that are encouraging them to break further laws by handing them a driver's license, which is questionable at best. I don't even think it's legal. And those licenses are under motor voter, registering them to vote. It's no wonder Newsom, Pelosi, Waters, and Harris, and the rest of them keep getting elected, because they have the very people they're promising free everything to at our expense registered to vote. And their pet judges are trying to block the change to the U.S. Census next year to ask not only how many live in this home, but are you citizens of this country? And no, this is not 1939 Germany where someone shows up and bangs on your door yelling, "Papers, please." This is a beleaguered GS worker who is just trying to figure out, okay, now who are you? Are you a citizen? Thank you. And I move on. We're not going to have ICE following them, deporting anyone who says they're not a citizen. We're not asking, are you here legally or not? We're asking you your name, how many in your home, their ages, maybe their genders, and are you citizens? That's not going to do anything other than prove how many legal voters there are, or people who are legal to register to vote, in California. Can you imagine the outrage in all but about New York and Chicago and a few other liberal havens if the country saw that instead of the 3 million vote discrepancy in 2016, it was actually the opposite? Because, of course, California lost millions of votes because we found out they had more votes cast than legally should have been. We know for a fact that we have seen districts where votes are cast and there are 50 to 100,000 more than there are registered voters. We saw in, I believe, 2008, it may have been 2012, some districts were 100% for Democrat. Not even Los Angeles or New York City goes 100% blue. We're at a crisis point, and there are very few things that need to happen when you're at a crisis point. You identify the crisis and you cut it off. This crisis is close the border. The voter problem is very simple. No more electronic voting. No more same-day registration. You must prove you are a citizen and legally allowed to vote. Then you will be allowed to vote on a paper ballot, because paper cannot be hacked. And of course, liberals and their pet judges oppose this vehemently, because they know that if there is an unhackable vote, they can't do anything to change it. All they can try is what Brenda Snipes tried 3 years ago almost, where you just keep recounting until you find enough votes. And if you're ordered to stop, then you don't even admit that you found more votes for the person you don't want to win than there were to start with. If we don't stop the illegal immigration crisis, the voter crisis will get exponentially worse, and our country will hemorrhage and break. It broke once for the wrong reason. With the benefit of hindsight, I can tell you, even though my ancestors fought for the Union, The South would have given up slavery within just a couple of decades, thanks to a man named Eli Whitney and his cotton gin. The price of housing and feeding human workers, be they slaves or not, would have just been too high when you could get a cotton gin. And that's what the benefit of hindsight. But now, if we fracture and hemorrhage and break, it will be unresolvable. We will end up being no longer one nation, but I would bet 15 to 50 nations. You will see some that just go their own way, and you will see others that band together. And I don't want to see that, but we're heading toward it at a fever pitch. And honestly, the only way I see to stop that is what's in this article: close the border. And then what I've laid out afterwards, which is fix the voting problem. But I've talked long enough. Make sure to keep your comments classy, keep them civil. Again, we don't learn from argument, we learn from debate. Also, make sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button. That way you can stay up to date on all of the content. You can ring notifications so you'll get notified when I post. I am going to be continuing this theme where I react to the news, but I have several other rabbit holes that I'm researching. I will admit I'm a bit overzealous when I start a research project. I tend to second guess myself, but I am working on the rabbit holes, trying to find out, one, if I should go down them, and if so, how. So you'll want to be subscribed and you'll want to have that bell rung so you can keep up with that when I'm able to go down those holes. Until then, have a wonderful day.